So welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the last talk of Around 2021. It's been such an amazing event of these 2 days, listening to so many incredible design leaders talk about their design process and how they're journeying into 3D digital design. And so the last talk is with a person, an artist, a creative that we met some years ago when he started using Gravity Sketch for working on a movie. Now, Gravity Sketch wasn't what it is right now. It was very early days, and he had a big part in just giving us a lot of feedback and really kind of like showing us how Gravity Sketch can have an impact in the creative workflow. And so without any further ado, I would like to welcome Saiful Haque to the virtual stage of Around. Welcome, Saiful.
Hello, how are you guys?
All right, so I'll leave it to you, Saiful. I'll come back for the Q&A at the end of your talk.
Sure. Just to recap, Q&A is open and available the entire time I'm talking. In fact, without the Q&A, what I'm saying may not even make sense. Daniela, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And hello, everyone on the call. I'm going to switch over to my screen and share my screen and go over some theories about design and about maybe how we perceive the world and how those views have altered my own approach to design and how that inevitably got intertwined with Gravity Sketch during the first huge movie job I had very long time ago. So let me share my screen here. And let me know when you see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So in front of you is a blotchy image of an object or a thing that doesn't necessarily have a shape or feeling that you can discern. Now, this is not an image I took. This is an image that I just got off the internet. But fundamentally, we're looking at something that we can identify. And I remember during the beginning stages of my design education and my introduction to just creating things, I always pondered, how do we know what shape to make something? How do we know, or how do we fall upon a style, a flavor, a form language? And a part of me realized that throughout the years, ever since I've been born, every single object that I've seen or experienced has been defined, much like the red lines here have defined what these blotchy shapes could be. If you're not following, hopefully you see a cow. Now, during this sort of experience of questioning everything I've seen, including the things I've designed, including the things I've been asked to design, how can I approach this differently? I keep seeing the same stuff in my own work. Every car on the street looks the same. Every blender has the same bevel. Every new fashionable sneaker looks exactly the same to me. So what is going on? What's going on in the world where we keep seeing derivative things over and over again? And why is it coming up in my own work? Now, if this sounds very familiar, then you might know the life of a designer trying to create something novel and something new. And this quote kind of, I guess, encapsulates everything that I'm going to be talking about today. It's a very beautiful quote that I love by Wayne Dyer. And it says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. On this journey of how to design or how to come up with cool stuff, I asked myself, how do we see? How do I experience a piece of art that I'm creating, or a product or a film that I'm designing? And fundamentally, it came down to reading about how value structure has a huge impact on our perception of form. Now, this was a lesson that I learned in my young years from Scott Robertson, who was a huge, huge influence on my design education. So value became a huge indicator of what something could mean. In this case, these shapes here mean mountain or vehicle. Then how can I leverage that to design or to create something new? Now, these images that I've gathered, they're not images that I've taken. They're actually just from screen grabs of logging into Facebook. And during one of these days when I was asking this question, I kind of fell upon what I believe could be an answer. You know, every time we try to log in and we see the sort of interface appear, we're teaching a computer through machine learning, frame by frame or square by square, what shape means what. This means car. This means mountain. This means car that's cool and exciting, or this means shoe that's hip and fresh. What are these shapes? How do I find them? Because I'm always trying to design those kinds of things. And here we're training the computer or a piece of software, what shapes mean what. So let's kind of unpack that. Now, if I step back, well, we're talking about VR. We're talking about a VR program. We're talking about new technology that creates a discourse in the way we approach things. And the answer fully didn't formulate until I started to use Gravity Sketch, which was weird. I didn't expect it to come from a three-dimensional experience. I thought I was going to figure it out while doing a sketch. Now, my own background, I've designed films, I've designed products, I've had the opportunity and the blessing to be able to design architecture, transportation design, even aerospace. And I'm not saying I'm good at any of those things. But I never would have guessed in a million years that I would be asked to partake in such different disciplines at so many different types of art. Not just film, not just games, not just industrial design, but literally every type of art form out there. I've been able to find a way to have a voice in, to express myself. And it's been because of Gravity Sketch. Okay, back to the cow. In front of you is a splotchy shape of something that many of you have seen before and you recognize. Now, if we're constantly designing cooler and cooler and newer things, I pondered, how did someone design this amazing, cool thing from my childhood, from my past? What if I never saw Darth Vader before? And so I started to analyze Vader the way that the machine learning algorithms do when I try to log in somewhere and they ask me to convince them that I'm human. Now with Vader, if I look at his shape, they don't all come from nowhere. And in fact, if I focus on each individual aspect of Vader's shape, I can see where the inspiration might have been driven from. Now, in this simple sort of analysis of what could have inspired this particular design, I employed this concept of pattern recognition. Let me turn on this filter here and kind of show you what I mean. So here in this filter, the darkest darks, that being the blackest black, is on this side of the spectrum of a region called a histogram. Now, utilizing a threshold filter on Photoshop, I can actually scroll through every single value. And as I do so, I might be able to discern some similarities between the left and the right hand image. And this very simple graphic kind of explains to you what I hope to be able to express in VR in a moment. I believe everything that we ever design, that we ever will, comes from a shape somewhere in the real world. And I believe the designer's role is to define what those shapes are and why they are there. And that is an opinion of mine. Just kind of nerd out just for one more second, and we'll jump into VR. So going back into Vader, I come from a background of industrial design and filmmaking. And industrial design has taught me a wonderful law of form follows function. This makes sense when you're making a door handle or designing a traffic symbol. Legibility of forms is incredibly important. But when you're designing a character for a film, or even a facade of a form of architecture, what is the function of that? And if I zoom into Vader's details, what is inspiring all of these little bits of shapes that have nothing to do with what I would call intelligent design, functional design? So much of every shape that is made up in Vader's face is a culmination or a plethora of multiple inspirations. Many are driven by function because of a story purpose, like a breathing apparatus that needs perforations. Others are inspired by something I call a motif or a theme, and that's usually anchored to something in a story or narrative. And so Vader's face wasn't necessarily referencing Hugh Jackman, but maybe was looking at the expression of an angry face, and maybe the symbolism of death and the symbolism of power in other cultures. And by congealing and combining things that have no correlation whatsoever, found its home in one of the most iconic characters ever in film history. So how can we take this? And how can we design anything with pattern recognition? I'm now going to jump into VR. And I've had the pleasure of also teaching through Gravity Sketch some of these theories, because to be honest with you, I'm always unsure if I know what I'm talking about. Now I'm going to zoom into a really silly array of themes or motifs. In front of you is a fish, a piece of cabbage, and a jellyfish. Now, in class, when I'm talking about using pattern recognition to design anything, I talk about those patterns as themes. In this case, you've seen a 3 here, but I talk about them through the lens of how these programs kind of analyze everything through value. And I wonder, and I ask myself, how could I combine a fish and a piece of cabbage to create an alien spaceship that I would never create if someone asked me to design an alien spaceship? Here was a result of a sketch. Now, I'm going to bring the sketch in front, and you'll notice that it's made up of a bunch of really crappy lines, and there's a lack for any form of draftsmanship. This is a new way of drawing that I've now made the way for me. I found that by doing what I call ugly sketches, analyses of the white and black read, sometimes people call these silhouette studies or graphic breakdowns, if I can nail a feeling that I'm trying to convey through a series of themes, then maybe I can create an alien shuttle. Now, in the beginning, it involved me looking at weird stuff that had nothing to do with anything that I would call a logical direction. But Gravity Sketch allows me to wonder why I think cabbage is alien and how I could create a piece of form from that. And then it allows me, without any bounds, to then evolve a sketch beyond that with the study itself. Now, when it comes to students and trying to get them to grasp these concepts, the results have been extraordinarily amazing to observe. I just am more proud of the students that I've had in my class than I think I'll ever be of myself. This is a student, his name is Sid Sora, never used 3D. In fact, he loathed it, hates interfaces made up by the old people of the old days, the sub-D guys. He wanted to design a mech. So we started talking about themes, and he did his ugly sketches. And this looks no different than sketches you guys do today. And then we jumped directly into his themes. Here, we're talking about what these words mean. We're not even drawing a design. What shapes are you trying to elicit? What feelings are you trying to evoke? At some point, we started playing with paper because we realized that him sketching all the time created the same goddamn mech every single time. So I said, play with some paper. One of your words is folding mechanics, flexible and protective. So we started to do these studies in Gravity Sketch. They look like kids play. They were also inspired by really awesome research we found online. Fast forward, and we started to mechanize what those shapes could be. How could you kind of orient them to evoke a particular feeling you wanted? Going down the process, we realized that, it'd be more interesting if the robot was, a flat sheet of paper almost, like it had an actual function, and they could get up and walk. So then we started to play again and play some more and play some more. And this process, I'm sure, looks very familiar to all the designers watching today.
Saiful, one thing I want to a bit slower because there's a bit of lag.
Oh, sure. I'm so sorry.
Thanks.
Let me slow down my camera dolly here. What I really want to show you here, guys, is why it's really about this, in my opinion. What Gravity Sketch really enabled for Sydney here. It allowed him to play. It wasn't about 3D, and it definitely was not about making an impressive model right away. It was about trying to organize all these crazy thoughts. And here came the final design, or the breakdown of the actual mech. As I get to the more or less final model, you'll notice here that he began to make little parts for a kit, which then allowed him to create more and more mechs for this particular design or story that he had. And then we went through a process of exporting, rendering, and painting over Photoshop. But today, this is really how I work on everything. In fact, sometimes I'll take on a project in a field or in an industry that I have no experience in because I see a utilization of Gravity Sketch in that field. And it has been an absolute pleasure to watch someone like Sid explode in creativity, utilizing this theory of looking at the world fundamentally as these interesting shapes and asking ourselves, what do those shapes mean to us and how do they make us feel? And how can we get other people to feel those same things? Yeah, that wraps that wraps what I was going to say. And I'll open up to Q&A.
Hey, Saiful.
Yep.
I see a question here from Shay, actually. How are your learning materials going to evolve with some of these new tools you're exploring? What can we expect?
It's a very interesting question. You know, could you repeat that question again so I can fully understand it?
Yeah, it says, how are your learning materials going to how are your it might be a little I'm trying to rephrase, but how are you learning materials going to evolve some of these new tools you're exploring?
The tools of Gravity Sketch, I think, have allowed me to have the freedom of paper and some forms of clay and wire and bubble gum and duct tape. And in a way, that has allowed me to be able to explore the possibilities of a design exponentially in any direction, because the challenge to explain something like a crazy robotic design to a student who may have no experience whatsoever designing something like that, I think that friendly sort of interface and the sort of tactile ability to interact with it makes it so that the learning happens significantly faster. From the two-dimensional approach of teaching the same course, it has taken students literally 1 week to understand maybe 4 weeks of lectures. And because of that, that has now evolved the tool sets that I stick to or I keep in my set of, or my tool bag. Right? I actually have now been getting rid of tools that piss me off, that aggravate me, that get in the way, that are getting so nerdy that I cannot be a designer, that I cannot art. And a lot of that, goes back to a lot of the topics that many of the speakers are talking about today, which is interface design. We're fundamentally just using a tool. Gravity Sketch, to me, is a powerful pencil. It has allowed me to now think in 3D much faster. And through that, I believe it has created an opportunity for students to learn faster too. But it's just a theory. It's only been about 3 years now teaching, I think, in VR. And I would say it's too early to kind of make such a statement, but it's exciting. And what to expect, I can imagine VR interfacing being a part of every single field that requires some form of visualization, that in the end run will save money, will optimize an existing pipeline. And if it saves money and it optimizes a pipeline in a weird way, I think it's inevitable that concept artists or artists today that are maybe designing apparel or shoes or architectural transportation might start to do what I'm doing, might start to cross-pollinate, might start to dip into other industries, and only because they can just express themselves. with a tool like Gravity Sketch that enables them to model without needing to be an expert. But that's just my theory.
Awesome. Thanks, Saiful. I've got another question for you here. Do you ever work with additive manufacturing outputs in mind?
Only once. And I don't know if this really counts. And I can't get into much details about it regarding what it was, but it was for a film. And we had designed a vehicle, and it was done in Gravity Sketch. And we gave it to an individual in Rhino, which then eventually landed in an artist that was working in SolidWorks. And the entire way, there were no challenges of translation regarding what the team was doing. Now, does that mean that my model that I made was the final CAD model that was printed or manufactured? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it doesn't have to be. I don't think it has to be. I think sometimes, and I can only speak for myself, I think I fetishize about creating the final thing. But lately, I've only cared about creating the solid idea first. And refinement and preparing something for manufacturing, there are a plethora of tools that Gravity Sketch can work with and have seamlessly for me in the film industry.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I just want to say, if anybody has any more questions out there, feel free to write it in the chat, or if you want to ask Saiful a question yourself, just raise your hand and I can allow you to speak as well.
Hey, Saiful. So I have one question for you. So you, really long time ago when we were chatting, you mentioned that now you're able to solve your designs in a completely different way because you're now able to see them kind of like in a different way, like something that you would have not been able to do before because you didn't really have the tools. I'm trying to...
When I entered the film industry, or my introduction to concept art was my first job was a video game company, and it was doing art and design for games. And I remember being so afraid to learn anything new that that looked complicated. I came from an education at Art Center through a program called Entertainment Design that was actually created by Scott Robertson. And I benefited from having the strict foundation of two-dimensional sketching, which I totally believe in. It really helps train your brain of how to see something in 3D. Now, when it came to actually having to model that 3D thing, I was terrified. I hated that aspect of it because the romantic aspect of a pencil on a paper to me was bliss. Fast forward to working in the film industry, where I was picking up tools like Modo and 3D Studio Max because I had to. I found myself kind of in a dark place where, like, I really hate modeling. And I do mean this. I really, really hate modeling because it doesn't feel like drawing to me. And then you came out of nowhere during that film and allowed me to model everything I could imagine without ever having to worry about learning how to model. That was the catalyst that allowed me to I guess, be here today. Really, I give Gravity Sketch that much for the credit. And it has to do with when I'm sitting there and I'm sketching, whether that's on a napkin or on a piece of paper. And then I go to my 3D program where I might have to import a scan or an image to translate my two-dimensional exploration to a three-dimensional extrusion. To do this, there's a lot of mastery involved, and Scott's literally the best guy in the world for it. Gravity Sketch gives you Scott Robertson powers without committing the years to master it. Now, that is not saying that you can understand design and create a design with mastery. just means that you can explore a design and you can explore a shape without having any experience or any knowledge whatsoever of 3D sketching, of drawing something in perspective or shading it to appear 3D. And I think fundamentally what Gravity Sketch did was optimize the leap from my sketch to the three-dimensional incarnation, or the first rough block-in of the model. I've gone to ZBrush, I've gone to Max, I've gone to Cinema 4D, I've gone to Blender, and they're all incredible tools that I will probably still use in the coming years. But nothing translates as quickly for the exact shape that I'm looking for as Gravity Sketch. Hands down. And that's why I keep going back to it. And I desire a future where I don't need to leave it. But that's just me.
All right. There's one more question here. So as Gravity Sketch evolves, maybe there will be less need for traditional 3D modeling tools, specifically for fashion products, since it makes the workflow easier.
I'm afraid to like cast a net to know what's going to happen, right? I'll tell you what, I got crazy theories and I'm going to hold most of them back. But Mark Zuckerberg just the other day announced what most of us have always been talking about, which is the leap into the next way of interfacing with technology. Some call it the metaverse, some call it, another place, a game experience of the real world. Whatever it is, what we're seeing is post-pandemic, remote skills are in demand. And Gravity Sketch allows you and allows me to remotely create something with collaboration, which is insane. And there was a point where we had a work site of maybe 4 or 5 city blocks and 3 or 4 artists at the same time. It's not that I think that it will replace tools. I just think it offers such a refreshing introduction to the power of 3D that I believe there's a bright future for it because it empowers the artists. And I think the artist, just like a musician, if they find a tool or an instrument they love, they're not going to stop playing it. And yeah, that's just my opinion about that. And I think as we get to the digitization of the potential future, tools like Gravity Sketch allow creatives to interface with 3-dimensional conversations. That's all it is. A vehicle, a piece of apparel, a piece of architecture. You can walk through it as you talk about it and draw it at the same time. If I were to explain this to my grandmother, she would call me Houdini. So yes, there's a very optimistic view I have, and it's a very strong one.
Which I love. We all love at Gravity Sketch. So you're closing the talk. So I don't see any more questions here, guys. If you have more questions, post them on the chat. Raise your hand if you want to speak. You can also do that. Hey, Saiful, I'm about to graduate from industrial design. I've been using Gravity Sketch for my projects for a couple of years now, and I'm so delighted with the tool that I wanted to be part of my professional life. My plan is to get to teach with a methodology that involves Gravity Sketch. Any advice?
Start teaching now. You can teach while you're a student. You don't have to be you don't need a degree to teach Gravity Sketch. It just came out like 3 years ago. And so you are already a leader in it. Now, if you want to go that route, I gotta say it's an amazing route because it involves you needing to explain your thinking as a creative in VR, lecture it, and model all at the same time. And I believe if you do that and take that course to teach utilizing Gravity Sketch, I think it might make you a more clear designer. What I mean by that is you'll have very clear ideas and intentions behind a shape or a form you put down or a gesture you draw. And that intention comes from your process. If it's similar to mine, which I doubt it is because I'm weird and I look at pattern recognition. But if it's romantic, Gravity Sketch allows you to explore that romance a bit more. And I would involve that in your teaching. Don't just keep it about industrial design. Remember that industrial design is a field and it's still new. It's still new. I believe Apple popularized it when they took away every single button from a BlackBerry and they showed you a touchscreen. But fundamentally, I think they humanized technology. And maybe that's what Gravity Sketch is doing to some forms of education. Maybe. Maybe because remote teaching is a new reality that we live in today. So yeah, do it. Industrial design is dope. Keep using Gravity Sketch. I don't see that skill set going anywhere regarding the need for ideas, and allow it to be an enabler of who you are, and allow that to become the teaching platform you share. Don't just teach industrial design, teach how you do industrial design. Otherwise, what are you adding?
There you go, Tadeo. That's your answer. And I mean, you said something right now that made me think. I mean, the way that you speak about Gravity Sketch is a very particular way of speaking about it. We tend to hear a lot of VR, like, you know, conversations around VR, conversations around technology, conversations around headsets, but you never speak about that.
Because they're gonna be yesterday. Look, this is wonderful. This is amazing. It's incredible. It is also a PlayStation remote broken in half. These are much better. And one day those will be the remote. And I'm not making a prediction. You all know this. And so Gravity Sketch will one day be able to tap into having the sensitivity of a single digit moving. Who knows what the possibilities are? And if you look at other forms of mastery before technology, clay sculpting, look at automotive sculpting. Look at the clay sculptors in automotive sculpting and look at the level of mastery it takes for them to hold a tool to achieve that curve, whether it's in the sculpt, whether it's in the tape drawing or the sketch. There is a form of muscle memory that is not keyboard shortcuts, that are not quick button presses that you've memorized through repetition, is completely to do with the way you use your body. And I would put my chips on the table and say Gravity Sketch will tap into the abilities that you have already as a human being. The technology is just going to catch up eventually. So jump on the bandwagon early if you like it. Could you map to a physical pen? Sorry, I just read a question. I was allowed to do that. Technology is just technology. It's going to change. Look, I have a 3D mouse. I don't use it anymore. It's a wonderful 3D mouse. Use it if you like it. It doesn't matter what the tool is, guys. What matters is what's in your head. Gravity Sketch allows me, I'm not saying it's the best tool in the world. I'm not saying it's the tool either. What I'm saying is it allows me to be me and to focus on what I'm drawing, what motion am I trying to evoke, and how do I solve this problem? That's what it allows me to do. And I happen to finish a 3D model in the process. That's why I use it. The 3D model is a result of a design process, not the other way around. A lot of us, and I think especially me, during maybe college or during when I was really trying to live up to my own expectations of great design, was trying to just make a great model the whole time. I wasn't trying to design a good product. I wasn't trying to design anything. I was just trying to make an impressive model. You're going to get that for free out of Gravity. Pursue what it is you're trying to make and allow the tools to slowly become familiar and just enjoy the ride and watch your model or your design evolve in the same way that the students worked it, right? And I think that is the beauty of it, right? That you're not trying very hard to create a model in Gravity Sketch. And I don't mean that to demote Gravity Sketch. What I'm saying is you're not stressed out as much. You're not freaking out about the complexity of the challenge. With enough hours in Gravity Sketch, you might find it actually more fun than work. At least that was my reality.
Work should be fun. And with that, I think it's a wrap. Thank you so much, Saiful, for your talk. It was definitely, it lived to its, what we were expecting. So thank you so much. It was great having you. These hearts being shared in the chat.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And well, thank you everyone for being part of Around 2021. It was our first annual conference. We really enjoyed having so many design leaders sharing their experiences and their journeys going into 3D. As you've seen, design and 3D design and workflows and tools are not kind of like cookie cutter, things. Basically, every designer, every creative, every team that needs to be involved in a design process decides what they want to use and should decide what they want to use for a specific purpose. And during these talks, we have really learned that there's no one size fits all. And so it was all really inspiring. Thank you so much to everyone at Gravity Sketch that helped made this conference happen. Hopefully next year it will be physical, so stay tuned. And thank you so much to everyone that has been joining us for the past 2 days. It's been amazing, all your comments, all your participations. And thank you so much to the Gravity Sketch community that is always there supporting us, being there with us, and really joining the mission of making 3D design more democratic. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night to some of you. Good morning to some of you, and good afternoon. My name is Daniela Paredes. I'm co-founder and CXO of Gravity Sketch, and see you soon. Bye-bye.